71 and 71 tomorrow. 70 all weekend.
There's rain, it's raining every day.
Okay. All right, we'll call this meeting of the January 25th Finance Committee meeting to order. Karen, if you could do a roll call, please.
Mr. Bale,
Here.
Mr. Copeland,
Here.
Mr. Drexel,
Here.
Mr. Horton,
Here.
Mr. Showerman. Here. Mr. Winarski,
Here.
Mr. Scatella.
Yeah.
Before we get into the agenda, I think Terry, you wanted to have some comments?
Yes. Just a little housekeeping. This is for council first. I was sort of chastised last week or a few days ago because council people I've spoken to, I have no problem with that. That's your job to give your view on what's going on. I highly encourage it because that's which you are elected official, that's your right. I speak for council and I speak for myself, unless it's something I say here and you want to repeat it when you're being interviewed, I have no problem. The second thing is when I put somebody on an advisory board, one of the first things I say to them is, don't come to me for help. Don't come to me to see what side I'm on. That's your job. You're on those boards. And you make your own decision. Council doesn't make it for you. We're separate from an authority. And that's why we put you on. That's why we put people on the authority to make those decisions. And I know there was, so please, if the newspaper comes here, the news media, feel free, then it's your job. And give your view. Sometimes it helps us. Now, I'm going to speak to the administration on this. And I would like this, and you have to pass this on. I would like to sit down with Doug before he leaves and Joe to discuss when somebody comes down here from the administration. Those people in there, Karen and her staff work for us. And if it needs, if the administration needs something, and I'll give you, somebody came down from economic development, came down and came over, I didn't know where their office is, you can't say so. And wanted to know something about why isn't this on the website, did you do this, and I think you understand,
Yep.
that's not that person's job. If, you know, right now I sit here, we lost the gentleman that's the economic development. The other person who works for economic development, if there's nothing to do, then you're falling right into my gun sights that we don't need that in county government. We have a planning department and a county executive that can help promote economic development from the outside with the people doing economic development. That's their job, and I think they would be pretty good at it, but here's what I'm gonna tell Karen right here. If somebody comes down here and they're abusive to you or your staff, because I'm gonna have a conversation with the sheriff. I'm gonna have them, and if you don't want to do it, you call me, and I'll call the sheriff and have them removed from the office. And take it upstairs, please.
Will do.
We're here to work together. Us, the staff, or the administration, to get to somewhere where we can do good for Erie County and the people of Erie County. We're not always gonna agree, and that's fine. Then we just move off on the next issue. That's my house. Now it's up to Rob.
Anyone have anything else before I go into the agenda item?
I
To try,
if I could say one,
Yeah, go for
one
it.
thing real quick. And we're not talking about it now, but when I do the words of inspiration or the prayer, anyone can do that. I've just taken to do it because nobody else cares to do it, but you guys are new. If you have a desire to do that at a meeting, that's absolutely fine. Just let me know and I won't look for one.
Thank you, Chief.
actually, you always have something insightful to say, so I enjoy it when you do that, honestly. All right, so if nobody has any complaints about this, I'm gonna take the agenda item just slightly out of order out of courtesy to the administration. Number two. The ordinance number two, approving a waiver of bid requirements for the county purchasing code and sole vendor contract between Erie County Health Department and the Regional Science Consortium. Be the water testing at the beaches. Brandon, you were speaking for the department.
I'm available to speak on behalf of the Department of Health if there are any questions. I know Nicole Gulash was here last time. We were able to send over some additional information.
Anyone have anything that concern there?
Thank you for the information to I did receive. Very appreciative.
Thank you.
And it is a sole vendor. Right?
It is.
And how long have they been doing that testing for us?
Since 2005.
That line up with-
100% lines up with it.
Okay, then I have no issues with it. Okay. We'll go back to number one then, orders number one first. 2024 library fund budget supplemental appropriation of $70,000 for the carryover unspent 2023 county coordination aid funds for a new delivery van. Lots of concerns.
And all the money was already there.
We will take the next two in one go, or we'll address them separately.
I think you got some separately.
Okay. Ordinance number three, first 2024 ARPA fund balance supplementary appropriation of $1 million to Erie County Care Management for upgrades to the homeless project.
And I'll say that we all received the solicitor's letter. He's here to speak on it. After he speaks, then try to address it.
Well, has everyone gotten my memo? Well, the problem that I see with this is that, the money has already been appropriated. And I don't see where council would have the authority under the home charter to put either one of these ordinances on the agenda and push them through without the administration first certifying that the monies are available for both of these ordinances. What I suggested, though, is since there's a consensus on council to spend the pretty much the balance, or at least $2,500 in the ARPA fund on these two items.
2.5 million.
Is that 2.5 million? That they could amend these ordinances to further restrict each one. For example, you could move to amend the ordinance to restrict $1 million of ARPA fund money to the Erie County Care Management, or some other project, some other homeless project. And the same goes with the DEI. I do have some, I think that council should look into both of these matters further first before going ahead with each one of these. And for example, I want to make, council should want to make sure that the county Department of Health, that the Erie County Care Management has the capacity and is prepared to take on a homeless project. I don't know if council is comfortable with that, has learned anything from that corporation, whether they've provided you with any suggestions, programs, ideas, whether they're set to implement and spend this money appropriately. My concern with the DEI is that, unfortunately, the DEI got off to a rough start, and their growth was, and the monies that were intended to go to them were aborted because of administrative interference. And I think leadership in both instances. So that really, what was initially contemplated as a $7 to $10 million investment in DEI, turned out to be only 3.5 million. And I looked at their budget numbers that were forward or that were given to me through the end of last year. And it looks like they have spent a little more than 2 million. So they have less than $1.5 million. My concern is that the money has to be obligated and committed before the end of this year. And it's really not that much money. I'm concerned about what the DEI is going to be doing in 2025 and in 2026, what their role is going to be. And this is assuming after they have committed all of the money. Just exactly what is their role going to be over those 2 years? And how are they going to be spending the money that we give them? And I'm concerned that it may be just an extension of salaries and administrative expenses as opposed to money going out to the people who need it.
No.
So I just think that that both of these are good ideas. I mean, both of these are fine with council. I understand that they want to go through them. And I'm not here to say anything bad about it. It's fine. But I do think that a little more time should be spent looking into it before before pulling the trigger.
Well, I'll hear one else first.
I met with them today. With Mr. Lee and their chairperson. And one of their members. And he did give me his budget. And I made copies and it's passed out. I have other information. Basically, I want to know what they were gonna do with it. And the estimate 1.5 million operating expenses would be from 7/1/24 to 6/30/25, $485,000. Do the generation impact grants again, that was at $5,000 to $25,000 for small businesses to get them started. They're supposedly gonna do that again if they get the money. And they, $500,000 to home ownership and training, education and health. For better health, and that's where they're gonna use the money for that. And the 15,000 mini business grants. And I didn't want him to, he asked if he should come today, and I don't think it was the time. We probably need more time to listen to them than we would have here. And on putting it in a restricted account, I think it's a good idea, I don't have a problem with it. They were very upfront. They did get off to a bad start. It was just a couple months after I came on, I went to what was saying. They do have good members now on there. And did you get the thing from Attorney Watt? Your questions answered? They were supposed to send it over.
Karen provided me with their end of year statements in that, so I can see what they've done with it so far. I mean, there are some other issues that I think that the council should be aware of in those numbers that we're striking, especially attorney fees expenses, which were sky high, and other expenses, but if I don't know, I'm concerned that there's someone over there is making $150,000 a year. And if the money's going to pay for
Time out, because I think we had him here 2 or 3 times. And I think 2 or 3 times we talked about his salary. And that's nothing we can do about going back and undo that. And I did note in your letter the percentage that you noted, and that's incorrect. So that percentage should have been based on the $7 billion that they were allocated. So it's not 15% of it, but in the event I think, well, if you come back here 10 times, and so we've all voiced our displeasure about that. Every time we just come here. At some point you want to move on, because if you want to talk about percentage. In terms of DEIC, then you should talk about the percentage of money that actually went to DEIC. From the $52.6 million. And you should talk about it in terms of the percentage of money that went to other places. Who perhaps weren't so much in line with the Treasury Department guidelines. And so, and he's not here to sit that, or Attorney Walker is not here. I think he sent them some questions around and answered them, whatever. But I will say this, you do a $600 million budget. I've been here 10 years. I don't see Black or brown communities in it anywhere, before ARPA funds. And you all just had the budget, maybe I overlooked something. But I don't see it. I don't see investment in those communities. And this process right here is probably a perfect example of why we created the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. So we don't have a bunch of white folks telling Black folks how to fix their problem. When they look at Black folks oftentimes as being the problem. And I think that it runs incongruent. Restricting the funds runs incongruent with our solicitor's statement that these funds have to be allocated by the end of 24, because they do. Spent by 2026. So to restrict it, it kind of lines right up with justice delayed being justice denied, which is really kind of crazy. And the fact that we're having this discussion over the most most vulnerable community in two communities, in fact, because saying we're dealing with them both at the same time, the fact that we're talking about restricting money for homeless people who ARPA dollars were intended for. The fact that we're talking about restricting money until we get a better usage. I haven't seen a board or authority or commission come down here and been raped like this since I've been here. I just haven't. And so I'm not here to assimilate. I'm here to bring some perspective. And God has me in the room for perspective sometimes. And the perspective is that for decade in, decade out, there hasn't been investment. That's why the whole purpose of this commission is to kind of give them some governance over their own affairs. And simply put, if all the great minds that have been here beforehand had the answers, we probably wouldn't be in this situation that we're in now. I haven't seen it restricted for redevelopment authority. I haven't seen it restricted for and I know the distinction between commission boards and authorities, trust me. I haven't seen it restricted for Erie events. I haven't seen it restricted for anyone. And so I also have seen us come in, because the solicitor is doing a great job. He both bring his legal mind, and I'm the first to tell you to lean on it every time, but I've seen other ordinances come down here that haven't had this type of level of scrutiny for much bigger issues or items, whether it be the library, whether it be Neptune, whether it be Fairview Business Park. I've seen that stuff come down here. It's really insulting. It's really insulting. But you know what? I don't mind. I'll stand here and defend it. If I have to go get the Pennsylvania manual and talk about Blacks being enslaved in this Commonwealth from 1846, and that doesn't exclude this county either. If I have to talk about Black home ownership being 2.3%, while the whites own 97.7% of the housing stock. Do you really are we really having this conversation about restricting this? Or we're talking about lack of investment in red line? Erie County has got a direction history of it. We're having this conversation in 2024. Yeah, I'm insulted. And that's okay, because I'd like to see the same level of scrutiny across all of them. Yeah, we haven't had that. We developed the Economic Development Department. We haven't seen nothing come out of there. Haven't seen a product come out of there. Guy gets a promotion today, I guess. Where's the beef and all that? Where's the fruit? But continue.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I'd like to respond to that. Because it sounds like, Andre, that they're misconstruing something or the meaning of something. It's my legal opinion that council does not have the authority to automatically.
Tom, I didn't
Put in
misconstrue
order.
anything. I know that we're waiting for, he didn't sign to say that he had the money. I've been here 10 years. Please
Okay.
don't be condescending to me. I read your memo. I understood your legalese,
Could I finish?
everything. Yes, but not to my peril. That you can continue after we clarify, because I haven't misunderstood anything.
So then everybody knows, having been here for at least a couple of years, that it's the administration that has to certify the availability of funds before council could decide to appropriate them. We've passed a budget and council's appropriating responsibilities have ended unless we determine that there's extra money left over someplace. And we know that there are ARPA funds, and we know that there's some money in the general fund. But nobody has certified the availability of those funds. So as long as I've been the solicitor here, and it's pretty clear in the home rule charter, council cannot do what it wants to do with these two ordinances. My idea was based on that, based upon the law, was the next best thing to restrict it so that the administration cannot use it for any other purpose, while council in the meantime studied both of these possibilities to see if they were viable or not. Has nothing to do with black or white or anything like that at all.
Well, of course it does, because that's the whole topic of the conversation is black and white, and that's what's wrong. You always want to pick and choose how you want to see that thing or view that thing. Oh, but it is a black and white issue. Make no mistake about it. It's other arms off of it. It's a budgetary line item issue, but it is. And I heard them very clearly in Chronicles say, hey, I drown out all the noise of special interest groups. And so this is a special interest group. They're a stakeholder, in fact. And so I got that process. I appreciate him explaining the certification of funds and all of that. And all of that's true. All of that's true. As far as restricting, I have talked to Charlie Barber, who's talked to Ed DiMatteo, there's not another agency in the region who has the capacity. That even in itself, we have an award-winning Erie County Case Management, who won awards for distributing money. For all these programs, ain't nothing they have to reinvent the wheel. It's a continuation of the things that they do already, whether it's rapid rehousing, helping people find safe, affordable, quality housing. I don't know about you, some of you probably haven't had those issues. I have them quite often, being the youngest of 11. It helps pay the utilities when the land, and not only that, it helps buy washer and dryers, sleeping bags, toiletries, spruce up the shelter. They have a right to nice looking shelter too. You like to go home to nice things too. So I got that part. And so I'm asking this body, because, and so if you pick up the phone, call Mr. Barber, call Mr. DiMatteo. I mean, I think that they've done a great job at it. All those numbers are ready at the helm. You want to know, you want to pick them up. But it's not an issue of whether they have the capacity or they know what to do with the funds, or do they have to rebuild or look for a program to do. That's not that. As far as the DEIC goes, I spoke briefly with Attorney Wapner and several of the board members as well. And so I don't see where Black businesses should have to wait any more than I think any other business should have to wait. Especially when we come here and we criticize them for not getting the money out. You didn't get the money out. They've had the crap kicked out of them by the administration. Tried it with the redevelopment authority, tried it with ECRA. He's back again for a second bite at ECRA. So he took the most weak, fragile one that we created, one that this body voted 7-0, said, we'll give them $10 million. Before my colleagues left that seat, they called back the first 3. They said, oh no, we'll just give them 7. He bullied them, kicked the crap out of them. They left 3.5 sitting there for a whole year while he battled over that mess. So yeah, they got off to a rocky start. Newsflash, most businesses do. Most businesses operate in the, and so don't have me start citing failures of some of their predecessors. Like the redevelopment authority with $3 million juice plant, all the property that we lost in bankruptcy. Where we had all our legal minds and all our bankers sitting here, and we still gave a $3 million unsecured loan. Where was the scrutiny for all of that stuff?
On the issue of, certification. I guess I don't understand why the administration would not, want to comply with a request for certification, right?
I don't know either, but they
We've
did.
asked for a certification. If they're blocking this on its merits, attack the merits, but I feel like we're just getting hung up on process here. You know, if we're the keepers of the purse, are we not allowed to look inside it? Or we just hold it while they go shopping, or, you know, I feel like if we would request a certification, if the funds exist, they should be certified.
Sure, I mean, if the administration wants to certify the funds or gives you
Because-
the indication that they are available and he will sign the ordinance, that's fine.
Because in a way, like, without the certification, you kind of lock it up in a box now. You guys want to certify the funds, $50 to go here, I'm amending it, and it's going back over here. You guys want to spend $50 here, I'll amend it, put it over here. Once I have the certification of the funds, it gets spent.
Yes, well, the box is locked up. The budget is balanced. So when you, when council decides, hey, I'm gonna pull $1.5 million out of the air, that creates an imbalanced budget. And it's a no-no under the home rule charter. Because council technically thinks the money's there, believes the money's there, and maybe even knows it is. But there's been no mechanism from the administration to certify that those funds are available for that purpose.
Can I make a comment here? Like, so first off, in regards to the DI and the administration, so they got off to a rocky start because the administration gave them no other option. The administration took them apart, right? They dismantled the
Yeah,
entire
you see
board.
that? I mean, I'm just giving you a legal opinion.
I understand that, and I'm not arguing that against your legal opinion, I'm just trying to establish fact. The reason why they struggled or got torn apart was because they weren't given a fair shot from the beginning. Now we're back, and what you're saying is right, the home rule charter, we have to wait for the certification. So now I'm looking over here, why can't we get the certification of these funds?
Because the administration desires to use them. like,
Exactly.
For something.
I just wanted to hear if they would tell me that.
I can't tell you that.
Mr. Cope.
What's the
Can
plan?
I say something?
Well, hold on a second.
One of the, I guess, Councilman, one of the things is in the process, it hasn't gotten to that point yet.
We have been
So,
asked him to certify the fund.
no,
Yes, that's not, we absolutely have.
We have asked him to certify the fund.
I wasn't made aware of that, so,
Correct.
Those two ordinances.
so those two
Right,
ordinances.
and the only response to a request for certification was an abusive email.
Yep,
Hmm.
so we could enter the abusive email as his reason, or does he want to give us a good reason? That he wants to use those funds for something else? I mean, this money, like you say, it's a small amount of money, and we're held up by a process thing here. He's coming in and deciding that he wants to, get in the way of the DI. Now he's going after ECRA funds, right? Where does this end? I mean, I think it ends here, and it's our job to put the checks and balances in place. We sent the communication asking for the certification of funds. Can you get a good answer for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add about that? So you're on the call. Seems so. Terry, go ahead.
Hold on, he's coming. He unmuted.
Doug, you have any thoughts about the certification?
Mr. Chairman, as I had indicated at a prior finance meeting, we do share Councilman Horton's interest in ARPA money for homeless programming. We don't necessarily think that ECCM is the best place for $1 million, but we think there's probably some amount of money that they could use. I would remind all of you that they do have, they just were able to get $1 million over 3 years for homeless work. So they are addressing that issue as we speak. And so we are willing to work with council on putting more money into the homeless situation here in town. We're not looking to block that effort at all. But we don't believe that just putting money out there without a more specific plan is a good idea. And so for that reason, we would resist certifying those funds at this time. But we're willing to sit down and talk about it and work something out, absolutely.
I would still push back on it because the administration is what he's asking us to do is certify that they're better qualified or able to do what needs to be done in the homeless demographic than the people who actually do it. They're saying that they're more qualified to do it than the home team and the shelter team, and they're more qualified to do it than JCAC and St. Martin Center, and they're more qualified to do it with all of the other many partners of ECCM, the Community Shelter Services, Community of Caring, the Upper Room, Mental Health Association. They're more qualified to do it than those agencies, which is crazy. And that $1.5 million that they got is a teardrop in a bucket because the money that we did spend, ARP money and CARES funded, our homeless problem still got worse. It got worse because we didn't address it in a timely manner, in the manner that we should have. And we didn't get money out, and landlords were putting people out, and we never recovered from it. At the same time, the St. Patrick's Haven caught on fire and was closed for like 6 months. They're still recovering. That community's still recovering. Community of Caring was closed around last Christmas, not this past one, when the $2 million sit there, while those two institutions were closed, while the county sit here, a human service entity, and did nothing to move forward with all these great ideals and plans that they have on the horizon now. And I think to restrict it when the money has to be appropriated by 2024, and to say that Erie County Care Management doesn't have, actually, I did talk to Mr. Barber, I could say he actually met with the home team and Mr. DiMatteo. You all are free to make those calls, you're not scared or whatever, but to suggest that the administration has a better finger on the pulse of this than those agencies is like ridiculous.
Well, I'm not suggesting that, Andre. I'm in fact saying that those folks are part of the conversation and we want you to be part of the conversation too. The county executive, in fact, is calling a community meeting as we sit. So, I mean, the larger questions are being discussed here. And we want this $1 million and probably more to be part of that effort.
Probably more should be part. And as I stated, when you first introduced that, Doug, we're always willing to talk because this problem isn't going anywhere. But I don't think that holding up ARP funds when reality, our task is human services. And we seem to have delved off into economic development in some ways that have neglected these type of things. And so I welcome those conversations, but not at the peril of having these people wait while we're still in the middle of winter. Winter has been kind to us, that we haven't had a lot of snow and precipitation, but it hasn't been too kind if you're living on the street or you're living in a parking ramp. Don't matter whether you got snow on the ground or snow in the grass. It's cold outside. And to ask the most broken people amongst us to wait, and we haven't asked anybody else to wait. Just think of just the thought of that sounds crazy. We'll have y'all wait till we figure out.
Well, I don't disagree, but this money is not, it's not a question of this money going into someone's ability to get a sleeping bag. I mean, we are helping these people today. You know that.
I'm talking, I've spoken to several of the shelters, they've submitted list of things that they want, and they're submitting stuff to the Erie County Case Management. And as you well know, we have a home team. They haven't really been as proactive as they probably could be too, but Mr. DeManuel, I have nothing but full faith and confidence in him. And if he's working with Mr. Barber and the ECCM staff, I think that they have a pretty good grasp on what needs to be done. And $1 million is really nothing to throw at the scale of the problem that we have, in the same way that 1.5 million or 3.5 million or 7 million or 10 million is a teardrop in the bucket after 200 years of being redlined and discriminated against. And you say, here go $3.5 million, so everything that has a drop of melatonin in it, you break that up and split that up and save your community. And we're here arguing over one point, and we're here saying, oh, they don't have a plan. Well, what's become evident is that the county doesn't have a plan, and it hasn't had a plan, or else we wouldn't be here.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, I understand the issue with the DEIC, but you know, we just did come out of a budget. There was an opportunity for council, if it was council's desire to give money to the DEIC, council had that opportunity during the budget process.
Thought we'd wait till Chairman Shank left.
Council made that decision, apparently not to do that.
Yeah, we thought we'd wait till we got a more amenable council, and it appears that that has happened. And so we're hoping that we'll move the ball, that at some point, it is promising to hear that the administration wants to talk to council about anything, because administration for 2 years hasn't talked to council about nothing. You selected 1 or 2 individual members, and you brought that stuff down here 5 minutes before the doggone meeting, and we've had so no, we didn't do it.
Come on, Mr. Horton, that's hardly fair.
Terry, you wanted to talk?
yes, just on this restriction. And I said it to Mr. Lee, and he knows what it means as well, so as long as he's been in government. To protect the money, so it doesn't come up missing. You want my take? If we don't give them the $1.5 million, they're out of business June 30th of this year. They're gone. They have proposed certain things, and you've got it there. I'm ready to. What happens if we vote on this Tuesday and it's not certified? It means nothing, right? Or does
It
that,
means nothing unless the administration subsequently certifies.
because I'm ready,
It's just backwards.
I'm ready to move on Tuesday and vote for the $1.5 million. That's where I'm at. It's ridiculous that we have to walk down the middle of the road, and on one side is the happy-go-lucky, we got money, we got a home, and on the other side are people of color or people that are poor, and we ignore them and we're blind to them. There's a lot of people sitting in this room that have walked through Perry Square, by a storefront, and there's a homeless person laying in that storefront. We become blind. We don't see that person. Instead of offering them $1 to go get a hot cup of coffee because we can't do nothing else for. What's gonna happen if this June 30th, this is over, DEI is done? Do we still, I believe county government still has the responsibility to help the people in Erie County. We'll have to have different ways to come up with money. As far as I'm concerned, the $1.5 million is there, and I believe this is, DEI will be funded through 2026, I believe. And, you know, we always hear, we give out this money about leveraging that. Something I learned today from Mr. Lee, that leveraging money, they don't look at you until you've been established for 5 years. Something I didn't know. That's a struggle.
Yeah, and because they have the ability to seek federal, state, and city grants in the same way that we do. But you don't have that platform until you've been an established entity for 5 years. And I'll say this and I'll shut up. I promise I won't say another word. And that is, we're in court right now for 2 budget sessions for 2023, carryover for 2024, based on the administrations, what they will do or what they won't do. And this body has said that, hey, you cannot add to the budget, and the administration has continually added to the budget. They've added positions, haven't listened to a word we said, and I see this as another opportunity. So if he doesn't certify the funds, we don't get the funds. But us failing to act because of what he may or may not do, I say make him do, either he certifies them or he doesn't. But we have a responsibility here. And we shouldn't duck it.
Comments? You guys all right? I think it's appropriate to discuss 5 and 6 at the same time as $193,000 between two different amounts for computer software for the, I hate this word, both the notary, did I do all right?
Voluntary.
Right? Voluntary, see, I've always been terrible with that word, thank you. And also the registered wills, both of these items had been vetoed out of this year's budget. Reduction that failed 5-2 from this body. I'm a little confused.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
The administration had sought to come back to council on these items with the idea of replacing general fund dollars with ARPA dollars. One-time funding to lower the deficit at the time of the budget. We would still, if council would be willing to entertain ARPA dollars for this funding, we would be supportive. Obviously, we're having quite a discussion about ARPA today.
would you certify those funds?
Yeah.
We would, but if council is not amenable to that, then we would support regular general fund dollars for this expenditure. It's absolutely a necessary project. It's one of those that the county needs to move forward in terms of moving computerized processes to the row offices, and the Aubrey and Mr. Bradford were both amenable to us vetoing those funds in the first place to try to address a deficit at the time. It was not any sort of a comment on the project. We supported absolutely. It was a
Well, and we're on the hook for it. It's a contract that's already signed. We're on the hook for it. It's a contract that's already signed. We've already paid them $122,000. Well, I know another 172 next year and 122 the last year. I guess like the executive made a big show about making a lot of cuts when he didn't get the millage passed that he wanted. Was that performative? Did we just always decide that we were gonna spend that money? Either way, one way or another? I guess I'm a little bit confused why something that was vetoed 2 months ago is getting put back up to be spent.
well, I mean, at the time, if you go back and even look at the notes of the vetoes, it was vetoed with the idea of us coming back and putting forth an expenditure of ARPA funds to cover this cost. That was absolutely expressed at the time of the veto, so.
Okay, so now we just don't want to use ARPA. We want to put it on the fund balance.
We are willing to go that route if council is reticent about that for any reason, then we're willing to use general fund dollars.
Said about it, and I think that it should come out of the general fund. And in light of the conversation we just had, it's actually pretty insulting.
I mean, it's an $800,000 hole across 3 years. So even if we use ARPA funds to cover the 193 today, we've got another 2 payments to make.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, justice delayed, justice denied. And I think that Black and brown communities have a reasonable right to expect that they would be seeing, their plight would be seen as crisis. And so while this is a necessary upgrade, I think it should come out of the general fund. American Rescue Plan funds were intended for those communities entities, organizations, and communities that were most negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic as well, and also those historically discriminated against communities of color, historically discriminated against. And I don't see, look at the use of that as probably okay, we'll stretch and say infrastructure maybe. But for the most part, I don't see where that's been negatively impacted by the pandemic. And I would say that I'm supportive of the software, but that it would come, it should come out of the general.
Yeah, I agree with that. Should be.
I agree with that. I guess I just worry, this year we're pulling it basically out of the savings account. Next year it's another 177 grand, another hill to climb. We're gonna have a lot of them. I mean, and this is a contract that we're gonna owe the money for, like we pay the bills, right? Pay the bills. So we're gonna pay the bills, but how do we set ourselves up so that in October, we're not looking at huge hills to climb? I mean, that's my biggest concern is, and this is just the second finance meeting, you know, I just don't want to see a lot more things pile up. I think if I remember right, we ended up taking another 711 grand out of our general fund and we over budget.
Yeah.
And that, I worry about that, doing that again this year.
You can add probably another 1.3 to 1.7 million. It'll probably drop on us for phones this year too.
It's on our budget right now with the contract for the prison. There's your million right there.
And I'm saying that there's going to be another expenditure for phones, and it's gonna come right in around that area. I think it's something that the last operations director, Ms. Lane, was working on. And I think when she left the work ceased, but it has to be picked back up. And so it would probably be a good question for Mr. Herschelman in IT, but if I'm not mistaken, that expenditure is coming.
Any other concerns?
Mr. Chair, just like to ask Paul and the administration if we can get an exact, how much money is left in ARPA? How much is officially allocated? We have it in here, or that's this
Yeah, you
new
got
one,
that.
all right.
I like
And I'll let you go over it. when
I
the
did
time-
up-to-date gaming and ARPA,
We
end
appreciate
of the
that.
year, just so everybody could take a look.
I like Paul. But
Here we go.
I like getting my numbers from Katie. When we pass.
Well, maybe that's a good question. Have you guys had a chance to look this over? You were just handed this as well, right?
Yeah, we just got this.
Can you think you can get us those dollars this week?
To substantiate what we see on this essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd
we
be great.
can work on substantial.
So it shouldn't be much different from what the controller provided us at the end of the year at budget time, where he told us what was appropriated, what was actually on hand and what was spent. And I think that was available to all of myself and our colleagues, but those numbers they should correspond, because I don't think we've done anything else with it.
So we'll look into these specifically to make sure that it's in line with what we're finding objectively.
Please.
Moving on, item number 7, excited about this one. This is, I'm not gonna read the whole description here. This is responsible contractor ordinance put forth by the administration. I've expressed my opinion that I'm eager to work on this. Have you guys had a chance to review the documents and see what that is? Anyone got any questions about that one?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is the ordinance that you provided me to review.
Yes.
Well, the problem with it is that we already have an ordinance in the administrative code.
In the purchasing code, the solicitor for the administration reviewed it to see if there was any conflicts with the purchasing code. Are you just saying that the two should be aligned at the same time? Or
Yes. Yes, I don't know what solicitor you're talking about.
the attorney at Spiros?
Okay, he reviewed this.
He reviewed it with the purchasing department. They felt on their side that it did not conflict with the existing purchasing code.
Okay. Every ordinance that council passes, such as this, for example, goes in the administrative code. I reviewed this ordinance, and much of it is already in the administrative code. So yes, I see them. It doesn't make sense to do anything, less than integrate, this ordinance with the administrative code, if that would come, the council likes this ordinance. But, we have to take into consideration, we already have it. That already pretty much, does everything that this ordinance does.
Should this be a revision, change to a revision to the existing purchasing code?
Yeah, the administrative, yeah, the purchasing code, if you want to call it that. Yeah, so, every time there is an ordinance that pertains to the administrative code, you have to have a corresponding ordinance to, amend the administrative code. So even if you present this ordinance in and of itself, it should be accompanied by another ordinance to amend the administrative code to incorporate this.
If we were to pass this though, we could also just then pass a supplemental amendment to the purchasing code to bring it into alignment.
Well, I mean, supposedly, but there's no reason to do it that way.
Andre, that's something.
Yeah, I was just gonna make us as, to point out the distinction that we do have our own solicitor. We do have our own accountant. And there are reasons for that. Particularly at the end of budgetary year when numbers aren't really aligned. And I know the city doesn't do that. But for us to obviously maintain our status as check and balance. And so I guess I'm cautioning you, go upstairs before, without checking with them. Not saying don't.
This is
go.
why it was sent to him.
Yeah, it's like don't go, but I'm saying, make sure, doggone, we'll always make sure that our solicitor checks.
Yeah, this is just an ordinance, apparently prepared by, I don't know, prepared a union solicitor or a union lawyer. You know, and so it's being offered to council to consider, which is fine, but, you know, if you're on council, the first thing you do is see what ordinances you already have on the same subject. And we already have one. I'm familiar with both of them, and this doesn't add much, but if council wants to incorporate any changes that are in this ordinance into our original, our ordinance on the administrative code, that's fine.
Could we highlight the noticeable, the highlighted changes in this, what difference, what differentiate, what's different from this, from what's already existed?
Well, you would have to do that because when you amend the administrative code, you're, you know, I mean, you're redoing it.
We should do that this year,
The entire code should be
the
redone.
entire code.
I had talked to you about that
Yes.
because there are, that hasn't been updated for 20 years.
Yes, Terry, we talked about getting together a committee to run through the purchasing code and all the administrative code.
So if we wanted to discharge this or deal with this as is, we would say, you know, as amended. or-
Mr. Chairman.
Table it, and
Just a moment, Terry, or Andre, what were we saying?
I said, would we, Master Solicitor, would you just to discharge this, would we just do with it as an amendment to the administrative code, or should we just table it and incorporate it?
I think council should pull it. And I think that council should work on, and I, along with myself, amendments to the administrative code, specifically the purchasing code. And then at a meeting, adopt the amended purchasing code that would include this, ordinance.
I would note that I have a couple of amendments to add to this already to edit it in the process. Maybe
That's
we
good.
could introduce an amendment to deal with those issues before we get to a first reading.
Maybe the chair could put together a subcommittee to do
Yeah.
the administrative code and work with the solicitor.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, I don't see where there's a rush to incorporate this into the administrative code, especially since the administrative code already addresses the issues in this ordinance. But I think that, since there's a consensus to adopt this ordinance, you might as well, and there's also a consensus to amend the code, you might as well amend the code to include that and anything else that council would be interested.
I think Doug, you had something that you wanted to add?
I was just going to offer to create an ordinance to integrate this in the administrative code if that was what Attorney Tallarico felt would be helpful.
Yes, Doug.
But if,
Something. Go ahead.
unless it was your preference to work on it, Tom.
Yeah, I think that we could do the job, but I appreciate your request, and if you would provide assistance at some point, I'm be happy to run it by you.
All right,
There are some changes that I'm aware of as well that I'd like to introduce too, so that's another reason why we should just amend the code.
Yes, this.
Personally, if it's easier to pull it for now until we get these amendments in place and then bring it back, that's
Yes,
fine with me.
I'm okay with that.
We need a motion to pull from the,
not really.
No,
Just not gonna move it forward.
let's not move this one forward. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, moving on to number 8, amending the 2024 general fund budget. This is dealing with a conversation of our solicitor and the administration as to how we are dealing with the changes in terms of where the sources of funding is coming from for the PDs, et cetera. Tom, did you get a chance to see what they put forward?
Yes, they have not put forward anything more than the ordinance that's on the agenda. I don't want to be difficult. I think that that everyone on council knows that when the administration vetoed the ARPA funding of 1.6 million for the outside council item, that what the administration meant was he not only didn't care for the source of funding of that outside council department, but it meant to convey that the money was going to come from the general fund instead. And, you know, the general rule around here has always been that if, you know, if there's if the budget isn't balanced, it's out of whack by a few $1,000 or $20,000 or somewhere in, you know, $40,000, then, you know, an amendment to the budget to include that or to account for that is fine. It's not a big deal. But in this case, you're looking at 1.6 million, which is a pretty big number. And so it was my thinking that right now, the budget is out of balance by 1.6 million. And that's because the administration vetoed the 1.6 coming out of the ARPA fund. Now, again, the administration is assuming, well, it goes into the general fund. But council has had no involvement in appropriating the transfer of 1.6 million or the appropriation of $1.6 million for the outside council. The administration has just taken it on its own that the money automatically went into the general fund. I think for accounting purposes and legal purposes, that just like the supplemental appropriations that came over number 5 and number 6, where they sought general fund budget supplemental appropriation. They did that because they wanted to come out of the general fund and they have to document that and they have to balance the budget. Well, it's the same thing. All they have to do is present a supplemental appropriation for 1.6 from the general fund as well. Because we don't have any accounting for there being a 1.6 million in the general fund, because the administration vetoed the 1.6. So I don't want to get technical on all that, but Paul, it's just a simple.
I know you and I went round and round on this. I think what we need to take a step back and look at the budget that was brought down on October first and see that in that budget, there was no specific money in the court's budget as a revenue line item for that $1.6 million. And when I kept telling you that's all part of the big pot of money that becomes the general fund revenues, that's where that money all came from. So I guess if we reference the court's budget and we reference the specific outside counsel budget, there was no revenue for that. So when Councilman Scatella proposed moving that money over, it was vetoed. The veto was not, passed. So the money just shot back to where it eventually, or where it started with. So there was no need to appropriate that extra money because it had already been there
Well,
with the proposed budget. So
well, firstly, the proposed budget is not the budget. Doesn't matter what was submitted on October first, the budget's November
But
28th.
there was no revenues, there was never any revenues anywhere that specified this will be $1.6 million for that.
So all the more reason to advise council that the administration has revenue of 1.6 to fund the outside council department, but there's no record of that.
That's what, as council, and I think I sent down the sheets, the beginning budget,
Right, I have that right
the
here. I brought it
action
with me today.
sheets, and
Right,
then the vetoes. When you take those all in total, you come up with the budget as it ends up.
I understand. I understand. There's just
Oh,
no
okay,
record
good.
of, I mean, no, I understand.
And
what you-
then this is the totality of the record of this is where the money ends up, this dollar amount.
There
Exactly,
has to be some corresponding documentation saying that this body moved it though, right?
right.
Yeah, and that's what you're gonna vote on here. This is what, when you take the budget as proposed, along with the action sheets, along with the vetoes, this is where it ends up at.
Right. So we're both saying.
The same thing.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, if you pass this ordinance, you're approving what the administration did on its own. Namely, after it vetoed the 1.6, it decided to restore the 1.6 from the general fund monies.
Veto the 1.6 from
But it did it
American
on-
Rescue Plan funds. And then they're saying, oh, we're still gonna pay for it, but we're gonna pay for it out of general funds, but there's no corresponding.
Well, it was
support
originally
document.
going to be paid that way, out of the general fund.
Right, and the veto is just the change in the source of the funding. I did reach out to,
Joe Maloney?
some respected long-term people in the area. And, it's just to get the historical perspective, just because we're lacking that in some ways. They agreed with the administration that the way that they're putting it forward, is in alignment with the way it's been done in the past. And I would-
But with an exception, and that is, we're talking about 1.6 million. In fact, Kenny had a discussion with Joe Maloney as well.
Okay.
Today.
Good.
Yeah, historically, it's been lower dollar values per him for what he said, so. Didn't warrant discussion like this, and with it being 1.6 million. Yeah, you can say it's historically been done, but it hasn't been done at that magnitude.
Now,
Well, and then,
if we go back over the last 10 years, and I show some
And
examples.
I wasn't there, I was kind of
Okay.
going off of some
so if we're-
conversation on that.
if we're talking about this year though, like we're asking you for. Like to give us, like, you.
I did send that back.
Administration is asking us to be, diligent about how we're approving money and make sure that we have a plan and where it's going and how it's getting there. And then all of a sudden, you wanna have $1.6 million that you just kind of like. Shuffle around and then it appears like you're not giving us all the information in the same way that you're asking for it.
I guess please explain to me what you mean by, what information do you want?
Well, you're talking about this 1.6 million, right, that it's there.
Yes,
And
Correct.
that someone did something with it in the administration, right? That's who's responsible for it.
I think one of the senior members would explain it better, but an action sheet that I believe that Terry put up, yes, to pay for the, or at least part of the public defenders via ARPA funds, which was then vetoed and then failed override.
But why are we still having that?
Now, the question is, how does it
Still need it.
We
get
have to
funded?
pay 'em.
Where does that 1.6 come from if it doesn't come from the 1.6 from me? Or does it default by existence through the way that it existed prior, or does it need to be supplemental?
I mean, I think it needs to be supplemental.
see, our feeling is if we supplementally appropriate $1.6 million, then we're gonna add $1.6 million. And the offset to that would be what? Debits and credits is all
Yeah.
journal entries. Kenny, what do you wanna put it at?
Yeah, from,
Outside counsel.
But that's already been funded through the budget.
No, it hasn't. That's just the point. It hasn't.
It's on,
You
yeah,
just did it.
it's part of the budget that was passed. The outside counsel is there. It was always there.
No, when the administration vetoed, see, the administration's veto is to knock it out, eliminate it, or reduce it. Now, that's all a veto is.
No.
Now, it vetoed the 1.6 million, it vetoed it. It knocked it out. He can't say, well, no, we really didn't mean,
I don't think in anyone's mind was the veto of moving money from ARP to pay for those people going to knock out having those people in the budget.
well,
Those
that's
people
where,
were always in the budget.
well, maybe that's where you misunderstand.
I
You
don't think I
vetoed-
do.
The administration vetoed.
Moving
One-
money to pay for it in a
No,
different manner.
And that's what you think.
Okay.
That's your understanding. The other understanding is, and if you read the veto, he vetoed ARPA money of $1.6 million going to the outside counsel.
So
So it's gone.
by your read, then their face value should be down 1.6.
Yes,
I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
And you
I
would
get it.
want us to bring it out an appropriating wages and benefits and the like? That,
no,
no,
the 1.6.
that's always been there.
Danny,
Yeah.
what's your read after talking with Joe?
I wonder, and Joe kind of, his sentiment was, it seemed to be okay, the way it is, because the virtue of doing this, voting on this, is effectively approving it.
It codifies it, and it's a different.
Right, it's just a different way about it. Sure, it would be nice to just acknowledge that 1.6 is not coming out of ARPA, it's coming out of the general fund balance. More of like an acknowledgement, I wonder if that would be the right way, because yeah, debits and credits wise.
It's kind of acknowledged.
It's a little bit
It-
more than
it-
this, the
It's
council.
accounting.
Right,
And, you know, Joe's opinion was, if it's small dollars, which it doesn't matter, that happens all the time. But if it's a big number like this, it should be documented.
right.
Especially in light of the large tax increase. In light of, we just adopted a budget, $1.6 million. It's not, that's a lot of money and for whole.
To think it out, the veto, maybe it's going back to the veto, what that actually did, and that was. Taking the 1.6 and not putting it into the general,
Correct,
which then would leave the general fund at a deficit.
yes.
So
And
then,
that's what happened.
so then this, what we're talking about, Mr. Tellerico is talking about. Is to then say the 1.6 coming from the general fund balance to fill that deficit.
Yes,
So that's what we're trying to like, just make it explicit. Have that 1.6 fill that deficit.
We're taking
That's what
1.6 million from the fund balance to fill that deficit.
I mean, they have that.
And that is baked in.
Right.
And that's what the budget
Right.
is.
Right. What would be the implication, and then if we didn't pass this change?
No,
then-
this would,
And is the 1.6 not funded at all, and we don't hire PDs?
there would be if you didn't pass this ordinance. But this-
No, because Tom,
I said if you didn't pass this.
even
if
if
you
we don't
pass
pass this, those people were not funded in a specific manner. They were not funded with $1.6 million of fund balance or ARPA money, or
Then they don't exist.
they've,
They're not- they're
they've
not
always
aligned.
been in the budget.
Not as employees, not as, they've been in the budget as a line item expense to the public defender's office or something that where they come out of. It hasn't been that they're county employees and we're paying benefits. This is something entirely different and a whole lot bigger. Stop me if I'm wrong. This is making them employees of the county. Mr. Lau, am I correct?
Yeah, and
So
this
this
is,
ain't nothing
and that
that we
was,
just gloss over.
no, this is not being
Say,
glossed
oh,
over. It
taking
was
one
passed as
point.
part of the budget.
No,
So,
but you're saying that you're saying, oh, they were always in there anyway, and that's not true.
well, as part of the proposed budget, they were.
No, they
But
weren't.
the proposed budget
No, they-
doesn't mean
no, they
anything.
weren't.
It's the budget that was adopted.
That's right.
Well, they were part of what was adopted also. Funding may have changed.
The
but those
outside counsel-
people-
He vetoed it.
No, he
Vetoed it.
vetoed,
He vetoed it.
he vetoed moving money from ARPA to pay for those people.
There, okay, he
What
vetoed that.
Terry thought to pay for those people. But if they're not paid for it with the money Terry had proposed, they're going to be paid for it out of real estate taxes, out of fund balance, out of
No,
a number of revenues that we get in every year. Yeah,
not without us approving taking $1.6 million out of fund balance and appropriating it for that cause. If we don't do that, despite what your understanding of it is once he vetoed that $1.6 million that we set aside to pay for that, that whole notion went away. Right?
That's right.
Right?
It's gone.
It's gone.
we
And so
can,
now you're coming back saying, well, no, we didn't need to do that. We still need to pay for them because we still need them.
gentlemen, we can agree to disagree. In my mind, those people were there in the proposed budget and they are still there.
And therein
Oh, we know
lies the
that, we know
problem
that,
with
guys.
two
You
and
guys
three
have
as
some
well.
comments or thoughts? I'd love to hear that.
Well, I think we probably should move forward with the ordinance and fund it.
Yeah, I would suggest that too. I mean, regardless of the difference in opinion of, or actually it's an interpretation of the veto that we're had a large end with.
So if we're all in agreement that these positions should be funded, then we just move it forward. Okay.
That's fine.
If there's nothing else, then we will go to number 9, a resolution approving the appointment of Kenny Bonus. Right over there.
Who?
Bonus accounting, the financial advisor, he just earned your paycheck, giving us some advice. Any thoughts on
Move it.
Okay,
We're talking on it now.
there you go. In groups less than 4. Reappointment of that firm, to perform an audit, for the Erie, for the county of Erie for the calendar year ending in December 31st, 2023. Thoughts, concerns?
The only item is, we were talking with Joe to get a little bit of historics. I think typically there's like a 5-year, like type of every 5 years, just put it to RFP. Not saying that this company wouldn't get that, but put it out there.
Well,
I think
this
that-
is year 5
Okay.
of a contract that's already signed, if I'm right. Is that what you guys determined?
Right.
Right.
Okay,
So something to keep in mind for.
so for the next calendar
Yep,
year.
and
we
then we
need-
can assist with some of the details.
Okay.
I should be.
And then, next we got number 11 is approval of a tentative lease agreement with Port Federal Credit Union for magistrate judge Denise M. Buell. Okay. And Paul, before we get to you real quick, there's been a topic of discussion here about the number that's calculated for needing to fund, expenditures and transfers for 2 months. How are you deriving that number? Because it has not changed since the last budget year.
No, that was a mistake made by my staff.
So this should be revised to around
Yeah, it should-
22?
Yep,
Okay.
yeah.
And you just taken,
What we
Face
do is we
value
take
divided by
budget, Divided
6.
by 12, yeah. Then times it by 2 months, and away you go.
Okay.
And the thing with that is, and I've said this, for my 2 years, that number, until the audit's completed this summer, this number, I'm gonna tell you that we have $30,528,604 available over and above what's needed for 2 months. Until the audit's actually done, we're approximating based on what we think happened last year, as long as the revenues and the expenditures equal each other. Well, that very, very rarely happens, so that number may go up. As I've said in the past, it just, it's a good number to look at, but come July, August, we'll know much better where we're at as far as that goes. But, when you think about January through June, we have open positions, we have revenues that may or may not come in that we thought were going to come in. We have, something else that may need to be expended throughout April, May, and, all this. This number is based on a calculation of a fully funded and a fully spent budget, so, it's a good starting point, but it's not perfect in any way, shape, or form. So, there you go. And then the 2 sheets, anyone that wants to look at it or doesn't, we took the unaudited 23s and punched them into where we were with 22 and before, because I know gaming and ARPA always come up in, what are we doing, how are we doing, and where are we doing, and that's where we're at with those. Food for thought.
barring all else, or third finance, and you can start with your large agenda today. Might be a little quicker than yours, yeah.
Like to call a personnel meeting to order. First on the agenda. Doesn't have a number yet, but ordinance for the approval agreement between the County of Erie and NCEU Local 143. It's the prison. Is there anybody here to speak, please?
Good evening. Just a real quick background summary. Last year in February, we engaged with the new union, the NCEU. We used to have the PSSU, and the NCEU became the new union for the prison. So we basically had to go back to the table, and by the time they put their strategy together, we met like in the fourth quarter of last year. But we only met with them a few times. So this is the tentative agreement that was voted unanimously by the prison at the end of last week. So everything is pretty much the same as it was before in terms of the healthcare costs. The real change, the significant change is the wages. We needed to get the starting wage up to be competitive with nearby counties. It's about in the middle of where the starting wage is across the state, but regionally, we are competitive now with like Crawford County and nearby counties. So the starting wage went from like $18 an hour to $21 an hour. And so this really, that was the key to get the contract passed, and it was passed unanimously. So we're asking for your consideration to move it, to put it on the agenda and move it forward as quickly as possible.
Besides the base starting salary, I'm assuming other salaries also saw a corresponding increase.
Yes, and we also, what we did was we have a new flat rate for the existing employees so that we wouldn't have compression Because what happens is if you up the starting rate, right, and then you might, somebody who's been there for 15 years might make the same amount or pretty close to the same amount as someone who's only been there for a year. So we had to adjust that and they were amenable to that.
And it's right on line with the budget.
No.
Right?
Well, the two, so we,
Wages.
yes, wages, yes,
Right.
but
I don't know.
we're going retro, we're going retroactive,
Retro's in,
retros in.
the retros are in.
And everything we budget is based on full staff, which we are nowhere near at this point.
I mean, that's my.
We've got a lot of vacancies at the prison, so.
Like 40.
roughly, yes. And so we'd like to be able to start recruiting at this new starting wage as soon as possible.
So. Paul, you'd respond to me, I appreciate you being prompt with that, I'm. Not fully understanding your explanation here, it looks like you included an increase of 3%.
That, the retros, yes, the retroactives for 23 were included, the 24s are not included. And that's where I gave you that $1 million.
Why did we budget down 930,000 on bargaining wages? On that department? Is it,
I'd have to look
attached
that
that
page
on
And
that
to
email.
give you a better answer.
So we're expecting this to add roughly $1 million
Correct.
in wages and then another 280,000 in,
FICA's, pension,
so that's
workers' comp,
1.5 added to the fund balance in the first month. I mean.
well, about 1.3, divide that by 12, because we've already got, because we're looking at, the fact that we don't have a full complement there, around 145 people, or I'll wait.
I just not, well, we just have to pass it, we don't get to negotiate it, we don't get to be part of that, we just want them to stay employed, I just. So our hands are kind of tied, but I look at that and I'm like, that's terrifying, that's 1.3 already.
That coupled with the 1.6 that just that we moved to take from fund balance and was that 2.9, it's another $3 million.
If we don't have some,
And that's not even including the phones that's coming.
we don't have some ways to start saving some money through this year.
Well, and the other thing is these people that are running 2 and 3 different shifts, straight shifts.
Very supportive of their workers' positions. I've been very aware of the concerns. I've talked to gentlemen about not being able to plan their family lives because they don't know if they're gonna go to work and be there 8 hours or 16. So yeah, I get that. We want to get that. I
This
think-
has been coming to a head for.
Yeah, no, I just,
A
I'm
long
just looking
time.
at it in the financial implications for throughout the years. We better start finding some ways to.
Yeah.
Scrounge up some funds besides.
So the
Yeah.
wages in the county are have a lot to be desired.
Yeah, we need to.
They're-
pay them.
And people don't understand that. When I talk to people, they think that the people that work for the county make an exorbitant amount of money. They don't understand that our wages are so poor that we can't get people
Sure.
coming.
Now, they think we make 70 grand a year. They really do.
Yeah.
Rock, one of the key, what I mentioned in that email about the overtime. You know, if you look back to 2015, 16, 17, that department was spending, and I know wages have gone up 3%,
Yeah.
but they're spending $400,000 or $500,000
But
a year.
our overtime budgeted, even if you brought it down to zero, is only 715 grand offset.
Last year, unfortunately, we blew through that and got to about 1.5 million, so.
So when we
Even
recruit,
if we
that'll
break-
offset it.
Yes. that's
Yeah,
right.
We bring it to zero, we
Yeah.
bring overtime to zero.
Well, that can't, you know,
No,
Right, they got mandatory minimums, I doubt we're gonna get it fully staffed in the next couple of months.
but the sooner we can recruit, the better, so, I mean, the starting wage is key here. That was That's why we didn't negotiate for very long. I think that everybody was really focused on wages.
Is this something that we would feel to move to a second? Would that be
Well,
more beneficial to amend to move it to a second
We would be
too? or-
grateful if you could, because it would help us recruit quickly. We could start posting those jobs.
I caution this body on doing that and starting that so early in the year. I think that it's a
Yeah.
contract, and I think if you want to make it
Contract, yeah.
retroactive, you do that, but I don't want to start, bring it, I think that's the start of us getting stuff down 5 minutes before.
Yeah, but this has been an ongoing issue though for years.
Been a year without a contract.
That's,
We've gone longer, they've gotten the money, it's a month.
it's a
It's a
labor of the
month.
body.
So BIPOC community can wait and certainly them.
And the, also the health
They know
insurance
they're
goes into effect February first. And so if this is passed before February first, administratively, it's a lot easier to just make the insurance effective February first. Otherwise, our staff.
Wouldn't we save though, by starting a month later?
Well, no, we'll have to catch up. We'll just have to we'll have to enter everybody's insurance separate from the other employees, because it'll be.
Are you holding out?
They wouldn't be covered, they wouldn't be covered for another month though? We
Well,
wouldn't cover them for a month, if they don't sign up in February, you're gonna start paying for it till March.
You have people ready to onboard now that are waiting for this?
I think we'd have people ready to apply when they see the wage, because right now when they look at the,
So 30 days
President,
or
$18.
2 weeks is gonna make a difference.
It might make a difference for those guys working a lot of overtime.
I'm worried about more concerned about the mental health and emotional and physical health of the people that have been giving up their entire work-life balance for over years.
$3 an hour more in 2 weeks, less is gonna fix that.
I think so.
Oh, man, they really need you for a therapist. I've been going for 20 years. They ain't fixed me.
You know what I'm saying, though. I just want.
I don't, I know what you're trying to get at, but I don't know what you're saying.
Thank you.
Number
Good start.
2,
It's fair.
possible reappointment of Dan Hayer to the Erie County Signing Region Trust, term to expire June 30th, 2025. Brought forward by the county executive. This will be the second term for Mr. Hayer. Number 3, possible appointment of Dave Generette to Erie County MH/ID Board, term to expire December 31st, 2026. Brought forward by the county executive. This will be his first term for Mr. Generette.
Mr. Cook, would you reach out to ECC and see if Mr. Barber, representative, can come over Tuesday for a conference or something. Few minutes, if that's okay.
That's all we have for the personnel. Anything for the good of the order?
10-minute break, and then we have an executive session dealing with personnel, so council, you can't be.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, I do need that break. I need a drink.
Yeah.
Go on to the bar.
Aaron probably got, like, probably got in the bottom left hand drawer.
I just sent the text.